We generally think of laws as these serious, carefully thought out rules designed to keep things orderly and fair, and mostly they are. But if you dig deep into America's legal archives, you'll stumble upon a bizarre collection of statutes that seem to make no sense at all. These aren't just dusty old regulations, they're a shocking, often hilarious, and sometimes downright unsettling peek into a quirky legal past that you'll hardly believe is real. Some popped up because of very specific incidents we've long forgotten, others grew out of the moral panics of that day. And a whole lot of them are still around simply because it's more hassle to get rid of them than to just let them be. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on some of the most unusual American laws you've probably never heard of. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew about the land of the free. Let's kick things off in Arizona, a state famous for its breathtaking deserts and apparently its deep concern for where donkeys sleep. Believe it or not, Arizona law actually prohibits donkeys from sleeping in bathtubs. Now, before you start imagining lawmakers seriously debating donkey hygiene, there's a story behind this one. It supposedly started back in the 1920s when a local fella let his donkey snooze in a bathtub. As luck would have it, a nearby dam burst and the floodwaters swept the house, bathtub, and the sleeping donkey away. The rescue mission was apparently so tricky and expensive that the town decided to make a law to stop that exact thing from ever happening again. So if you're in Arizona and your donkey looks like it needs a nap near your bathroom, maybe point it towards the stable instead. This kind of concern for animals, or maybe because of animals, shows up in some really unexpected places. Still in Arizona, it's illegal to hunt camels. This law goes way back to the mid-1800s when the US Army actually tried using camels as pack animals in the dry Southwest. Yep, the Camel Corps was a real thing. When the experiment didn't quite work out, a lot of camels were just let loose in the wild. They apparently started bugging local farmers, which led to this protective, yet now pretty baffling ban on hunting them. Who knew Arizona once had a feral camel issue? Then there's Washington State, where lawmakers have taken a pretty protective stance towards a certain famous elusive creature. It is, in fact, illegal to harass Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or any other undiscovered subspecies. This law, or more accurately, an ordinance in Skamania County, popped up in 1969, right when Bigfoot fever was at its peak. The ordinance declared the Sasquatch an endangered species and made it a felony to slay one. While it's maybe more of a quirky local thing, it really shows how folklore can sometimes bump right up against the law. So if you're hiking in the Pacific Northwest and happen to meet a large, hairy, two-legged creature, probably best to be super polite. Annoying Bigfoot could have actual legal consequences. And don't think Maryland is above such animal-focused legal oddities. If you're planning a movie night and your plus one happens to be a lion or a tiger, you'll need a special permit. The law technically says you need this for taking any wild animal into a movie theater. You can only imagine the kind of incident that led to that particular rule. Maybe a poorly timed roar during a really dramatic scene. Moving on from the animal kingdom to us humans, let's head over to Alabama. Down there, you need to be careful about your choice of facial hair, especially if you're going to church. It's illegal to wear a fake mustache in a place of worship if it makes people laugh and disrupts the service. This law is part of some broader public decency rules aimed at keeping things orderly, particularly in sacred spaces. While it might sound like the setup for a comedy skit, the idea was to make sure religious services could happen respectfully without any funny disguises causing an uproar. Though it's rarely, if ever, enforced today, it's still a peculiar reminder of a time when even a chuckle-worthy costume piece could be seen as a punishable offense. And speaking of things that might cause a commotion, North Carolina once had a law against singing off-key in public. Just imagine what that would mean for karaoke nights if it was strictly enforced. The exact story behind it is a bit fuzzy, but it likely falls into that category of laws meant to keep public order and stop people from causing a disturbance, no matter how badly they were singing. You have to wonder how many aspiring singers accidentally broke the law before it just faded away. Down in Berkeley, California, early birds who also happen to love canaries need to be a bit careful. It's still illegal to whistle for a lost canary before 7 a.m. This very specific rule strongly suggests there was some past disagreement, maybe a neighborhood tiff where one person trying to get their feathered friend back kept waking up someone else. It's a perfect example of how a single local annoyance can sometimes get written into law, leaving folks in the future scratching their heads about the story behind it. The world of business and buying stuff hasn't escaped its share of strange laws either. In Texas, for example, it's explicitly illegal to sell your own eyes. Now, that might sound like something that doesn't need to be said, but it's rooted in broader laws that ban selling human organs, which are there to prevent trafficking and make sure medical practices stay ethical. The specific mention of eyeballs is definitely attention-grabbing and makes you wonder if there were some particular worries or incidents that made them spell it out so clearly. Delaware has a surprisingly firm rule about what happens to pet grooming leftovers. Selling dog or cat hair is illegal and could get you a hefty fine. The reasons for this one are a bit less obvious. Maybe it was about public health or trying to stop people from fraudulently selling fur. Whatever the reason, it's a law most people would probably never even think about breaking. Mainly because the market for stray pet hair is, let's say, pretty small. Then you've got the Sunday laws, often called blue laws, which are leftovers from a time when religious beliefs heavily influenced when and what businesses could do. In Ohio, it was once against the law for stores to sell cornflakes on Sundays. This kind of restriction was common in many states, limiting all sorts of activities on the Sabbath. While banning cornflakes specifically seems oddly particular, it shows a wider effort by society to enforce a day of rest. And religious observance, even down to what you could have for breakfast. And if you happen to be in the advertising game, Hawaii might not be your top spot. The state famously banned billboards entirely. This call was made to protect the natural beauty of the islands, making sure that stunning views weren't all cluttered up with ads. While maybe not terrifying, it's an unusual and pretty bold move in a country that's usually saturated with outdoor advertising. It really shows a state putting its scenery ahead of certain kinds of business. Some of the laws that really make you raise an eyebrow are the ones that reflect outdated ideas about society and gender. Take Vermont, for instance. An old 19th century law there, though it's not enforced anymore, technically required women to get written permission from their husbands before they could get dentures. This rule is a pretty stark reminder of a time when women had way fewer legal rights and their independence was seriously limited, even when it came to their own health and how they looked. Society has thankfully moved on, but the fact that a law like this could just hang around on the books says a lot about how slowly legal systems sometimes ditch the baggage of the past. Over in California, an old law technically stops women from driving a car while wearing a housecoat or bathrobe. This probably came from a time when people were much more concerned about public decency and what was considered proper clothing to wear outside the home. This law is another relic of old social expectations. While you're probably not going to get pulled over for driving while robed these days, its existence is a curious nod to how much views on what's okay to wear in public have changed. Even something as harmless looking as pickles hasn't managed to escape legal attention. In Connecticut, for a pickle to be legally sold and considered okay to eat, it has to bounce. Yes, you heard that right. This bounce test supposedly involved dropping a pickle from 1 foot up. If it didn't bounce, it was considered no good, possibly as a way to check its freshness or make sure it was pickled correctly. This law is said to have started in the 1800s to stop shady sellers from passing off spoiled cucumbers as good pickles. It's a wonderfully bizarre example of early food safety rules. So why are these peculiar, often totally unenforceable laws still kicking around? Well, there are a few reasons. Many were passed because of very specific local situations that are now ancient history, like that donkey in the Arizona bathtub. Others reflect the moral or social anxieties of a completely different era. Often they simply haven't been taken off the books because it takes time and effort for lawmakers to sift through old statutes and officially remove them, especially if they're not really causing any active problems or confusion. They just become legal ghosts haunting the edges of the law books. Some people argue that a lot of these weird laws you see floating around online are exaggerated or even totally made up. And while that's definitely true for some, a surprising number are or were genuinely real. They act like historical artifacts. giving us a unique peek into the concerns, values, and sometimes the outright strangeness of American society in the past. They show how laws can be incredibly specific, how cultural norms get written into law, and how legal systems can be pretty slow to catch up with changing times. Beyond just being funny, these unusual statutes remind us that legal systems are living things. They're always evolving, but they also carry bits of their past with them. They show us that the line between sensible rules and complete absurdity can sometimes be surprisingly thin, and that the terrifying truth is sometimes just how incredibly strange the law can be. What about you? Have you ever stumbled across a bizarre law in your state or town that just made you scratch your head? Maybe there's some local rule that seems totally inexplicable today. Share the weirdest laws you've encountered in the comments below. I'd love to hear